Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and general news show. Because there's this new blue card rule introduced to football. I think it's a load of rubbish. I get that maybe some fouls need to be punished, and I just think the referees will use it like idiots and that the game is gone and I don't like this blue card rule. But we will talk about that. We're going to talk about Ratcliffe's plan to utilise Saudi to get Manchester United out of FFP trouble. John Murtough has been sent to build good relationships with Saudi on a mission. Ben Jacobs gave some insight into how that went. Was it a mission successful? We're going to talk about Ratcliffe actually technically having more power than the Glazer siblings as individuals, not as a collective because you put their six together, but actually because of that, Ratcliffe will have more power than you think. Obviously, Avram has been losing powers because he's had issues with other companies that he's worked at, and apparently I read somewhere that basically the money Avram gets from Jim is essentially going into him paying off other issues he's got into with other companies on the stock exchange, and Avram's in a bit of a scenario, and that's why the Glazers are giving up power and giving up more power. And could this be the beginning of the end for the Glazers? There's so much to get into, so please do hit the like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Let me know in the chat yes or no to blue cards. We've got one comment saying here, good blue cards because it will shut these hyperactive Scousers, the way they behave. The thing is, I get to an extent why people will like the idea of blue cards, but you also have to remember the amount of ridiculous yellow cards we get for nonsense, the amount of VAR calls that are delayed for ages. VAR be looking at blue cards. Oh, that's now so long. The blue cards given for Bruno for telling the ref for being an idiot. Like, Delo got sent off in a game because it was a Man United throw-in, and he said to the ref, it's a Man United throw, and the ref gave him a yellow card for dissent, and he went, oh, and then he gave him a second yellow card for dissent. The reason I don't want these blue cards in is because I don't trust what the referees are going to do with these blue cards. More fatigue, more injuries. So somewhere along the touchline will be a new sin bin area. I'm not a fan of it. Let me know in the chat. I'm not a fan of this blue card introduction. Blue card out. I mean, let me know how you're feeling as well. What will happen if a player receives 2 blue cards in a game? They miss 20 minutes. I don't like it. Leave football how it is. Like, do you know what I mean? Just leave football how it is. They're changing so many rules to the point that it's annoying. They're making games so much longer. They're adding new rules every season to the point that it is ruining the game a bit. Like, they're adding all those rules this season. You can't do this to the ref and you can't do that to the ref. It's almost like referees are just coming up with the rules because when they make bad decisions, they get stick. It's all like football right now in the media, mainstream media, not fan creators, mainstream media, always backing up referees. Sky always backing up referees, making rules to back up referees. I don't agree with some of the abuse referees get, but some of them do need to get better at their job. I don't like this blue card rule. I don't. I think it's pointless. I think it's silly. I think it's not going to help VR. It's not going to help fatigue. And I'm not a big fan of it. How many blue cards have been given in a period of time? Again, I think it's a silly rule. I honestly hope it doesn't happen. I think it might happen as well. It's less of a red card. I think if it's used harshly, I think if a blue card is a rare thing, like a red card, but it's like for sort of, it's almost like an amber card for things that aren't quite red cards but are dirty, maybe. But I feel like refs, because they've been giving out silly yellow cards this season, will just give out silly blue cards. I mean, look, if they use it properly, it can't be awful, but I feel like I don't trust the refs. I do apologise if we do get a little bit of lag and stuff throughout the stream, but I do want to get into some news. I do want to get into some stories. We will obviously talk about sort of the blue, the yellow cards, all of that. It's the blue equivalent of a yellow card or something like that as well. And Alice, Jim Ratcliffe going into partnership, you watch all the big games, money talk. Well, let's talk about Ratcliffe as well. Super League will be next. I'm fed up with this Super League. I'm fed up with this blue card. I'm fed up with them just changing the rules of football. Just leave it how it is. Maybe I'm traditional, but leave it how it is. Take us back to 2009 when Man United were good and football was at its best. Let's talk about it. I want to talk about the Saudi plan. And then I want to talk about sort of Avram sort of situation and some issues going on with Avram Glazers. So This was said by Ben Jacobs today on the MUFC MPP YouTube channel. He said that John Murtough went to Saudi Arabia during the Club World Cup in what was termed relationship building. Though he put things out there in the market, he realised quickly that the public preservation that Saudi clubs overpay is incorrect, says sources say Murtough was a bit naive. So basically, Manchester United are on this sort of big plan to sell players. If you guys know, Varane, Casemiro, even Bruno Fernandes, a lot of Man United players have been linked to Saudi Arabia, Antony and Sancho. And essentially, John Murtough went out to Saudi Arabia to basically say, Antony and Sancho on the table, we might even consider Varane and Casemiro. Ratcliffe wants to get big, high-wage players out of Manchester United. Ten Hag even said today in the press conference he doesn't know about the future of Varane. Varane and Evans' contract expires at the end of the season. I don't know what we're doing with Varane's contract. If we let Varane walk for free, we are fools. If you when you've just extended Lindelof's contract for a year, Lindelof, who is rubbish and scared of defending, if Varane, yes, he's on stupid wages, but if Lindelof stays in next season, you let Varane walk for free because you extend Lindelof's contract and not Varane's, I don't know where you're on there, because if you extend Varane's contract, sell him to Saudi in the summer, even if he's not going to stay, because then you can get money. But essentially, United are looking at Varane, Casemiro, Antony and Sancho. Obviously, Martial will leave. They're the 5 players that are key that United get rid of in terms of their FFP thing. Now, one of Casemiro and Varane, I believe, will stick around next season because they are actually seen as important and heavily admired by Eric Ten Hag. But there's this whole FFP scenario. So Jim Ratcliffe is sort of sent Murtough, and Murtough's kind of gone on a mission to Saudi to say, you know, Antony's on the market, Sancho's on the market. And Man United have been engaging in Zoom calls with other teams and meetings with other teams to make it clear that about 10 of their players are on the market, because Man United are desperate to sell this summer, absolutely desperate to sell. And they want Saudi to come in, and they sort of went to Saudi with that hope that Saudi would spend 50 million on Sancho, 50 million for Antony. And John Murtough went to Saudi, and he was described as naive. John Murtough went to Saudi, tried to chat up Saudi, act like Murtough and Antony were 50 million each, and see if Saudi would pay. Saudi aren't stupid. Saudi give out ridiculous wages. I mean, ridiculous. A lot of it is commercial stuff. But Saudi know not to pay 50 million for a player that's not worth 50 million. You've got to remember that. Saudi know when to stop paying. And Man United thought, let's help sell by going to Saudi and hope that they buy our players. Saudi will buy Casemiro, Saudi will buy Varane, Saudi would buy Bruno Fernandes because they're quality. Saudi don't want Antony because he's not very good. That is the thing. So Jim Ratcliffe's got sort of a plan to hopefully sell to Saudi and get rid of those 5 big earners. Murtough's been out trying to talk to Saudi, chat them up. But I think the Saudis are looking at it going, we're not going to spend that kind of money as well. It'd be good if Murtough can stay in Saudi, says David. Kaz says Varane won't leave to Saudi unless crazy money comes in, like 1 million a week. I don't know, because Varane sort of, I don't know with Varane. Was Varane one of the players that spoke up against Saudi? Or was that Rodri and Cruz? I feel like Varane wasn't very pro-Saudi, but I'm probably getting it mixed up with someone else. Paula says, well, Seth, it's the job's ref to keep 11 players. Well said, it's a ref's job to keep 11 players on the pitch. What was I saying there? And Alice, Jim Ratcliffe's going, I've read that one out as well. I'm just scrolling through the chat here. I've completely forgot what we're talking about. We ain't going to sell Bruno. Oh, no, I never said we're going to sell Bruno. Saudi were interested in Bruno. Saudi would love Bruno Fernandes. United aren't going to sell him. I'm just saying that Bruno Fernandes is one of those players that Saudi are looking at like, yeah, we take him, but we aren't going to sell Bruno Fernandes to Saudi. Let's get into the more interesting story. We're going to talk about the downfall of the Glazers, something that I want to happen at this club, something that we all want to happen at this club, the downfall of the Glazers. What is going on? So there's a lot of stories coming out today, mostly by Ben Jacobs, but he did mention this. He said, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the most significant individual at Manchester United in terms of shares. If there is a divide between the Glazers, and some of the Glazers can use Ratcliffe to get things over the line. So if there's a decision that United have to make, and some Glazers want to do this and some Glazers want to do that, because Ratcliffe, as an individual, has more power than the Glazers, he can have the final say. If all the Glazer siblings want to do something, Ratcliffe doesn't have a chance, because the 6 Glazer siblings will outpower him for how much they own of United. But if Ratcliffe wants to do something and there's just one Glazer sibling, Ratcliffe outpowers Avram. If just Avram wanted to do something, if just Joel wanted to do something, Ratcliffe outpowers him. And what is essentially being said is, if there is a divide between the Glazers, and there's been a suggestion that there is a bit of a divide between the Glazer family at the moment, Ratcliffe will have the final say on what is done. Now, interestingly, a rumour and report going about was that actually there's a feeling that Ratcliffe may eventually completely pay out, probably in 18 months, the other Glazer siblings other than Joe and Avram, which would extend Ratcliffe's power to something like 50% of the club, or a little bit under that. But there is a feeling that within 18 months, Joe and Avram will still have their sort of small percentages each, but Darcy, Kevin, and Brian Glazer could all be basically bailed out by Ratcliffe because the other Glazer siblings want to sell. You've got to remember that Glazers wanted to sell. Joe and Avram said, no, we can get more money if we stick with Jim and ride out. There's a feeling that if the other Glazer siblings decide to sell in 18 months, they can sell their shares to Ratcliffe, and then Ratcliffe could be on the way to majority control. Avram Glazer's in a bit of a sticky situation, in a bit of a legal case with other things going on in the stock exchange. And ultimately, he could be in a situation where he might want to take a step back from Manchester United as well. His money that we're paying him out with, I think, is being used to get him out of trouble, which is quite interesting. Avram Glazer, every business he's touched has gone, like that's how I describe it. Every business Avram Glazer's touched has gone down. Green and gold to the club is sold. Glazer's out. Ratcliffe needs to clear the debt first. I get that. I get because Qatar came in and they promised to clear the debt. There is that expectation that Ratcliffe should come in and clear the debt. It's not Ratcliffe's debt to clear. I will give Ratcliffe that. I want the debt cleared, but it's not Ratcliffe's debt to clear. It should be the Glazers' debt to clear. And well, unfortunately, they put it on the club, and unfortunately, ultimately, Ratcliffe's going to have to pay off the debt, pay off the interest, because the Glazers have basically brought the club, put all their debt on the club, made a load of money out of the club, and then they'll leave the club rinsing more money out of the club when they could have left a few years back and leaving the debt on the club as well. They could sell the whole club in 2 years, not to Ratcliffe. For me, the most important thing is full sale. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to take Ratcliffe with an open mind and hope that he does good and positive things at Manchester United. Actions speak louder than the words. I will judge Ratcliffe by what we see at United over the next few years. I hope he does well. The most important thing is full sale, whether it's full sale to Ratcliffe or if it's full sale not to Ratcliffe. The most important thing for me is full sale of the club to someone that wants to bring the club back to the top and is not interested in taking money and dividends out of the club. The one thing I'll give Ratcliffe is Ineos makes so much more money than Man United that if he wants dividends, he can take it out of Ineos. I don't like that Jim Ratcliffe has enabled the Glazers to stay. I was pro Qatar and wanted Qatar to be our owners because of the Glazers were completely gone. There was no debt. But if Ratcliffe completely buys the club, I'm going to be more okay with that because so far I brought in Omar Barada. But the most important thing for me is you just get the greedy, power-hungry Glazers out. Let me get my screen back up and dive into a few more stories because there's lots of information coming out on sporting director and changes at United as well. Avram's nearly 70, he should leave, says Gaz. Hopefully he does. Avram might have to leave the board. That's just rumours going about as well. And the bond debt can't be cleared till 2027. So Jim Ratcliffe is pumping money into the club, so the debt isn't important right now. Thank you very much for the input, Darren. I did not know that. Cheers for that as well. Would be nice for the club to be eventually sold. So essentially, yeah, what's been said is Ratcliffe will have more individual power than Glazer siblings. So if there's a split, Ratcliffe can have the final say on decisions. It's sort of been reported, and we won't know until things really get to business, that Ratcliffe's going to have a lot more control than we think. Ratcliffe's going to have all the sporting control on the football side of things, but Ratcliffe now has control in terms of financial side of things because it interties with the football things, and that Ratcliffe might have ultimate control over the Glazers when it comes to split decision making, and Ratcliffe will make decisions over what he thinks is best for United. The Glazers are going to make decisions off what they think will make more money for them. So continuing on, because there is a big decision to be made at Manchester United, and that is on the director of football. We spoke about this in yesterday's live, so we won't get into too much information on this, but lots of interesting info has come on about who might be the next director of football at Manchester United. So let me know in the chat who you want the director of football to be. My first choice would very, very much be Dan Ashworth. If Dan Ashworth could be director of football, fantastic. He'd be the best guy. My second choice would be Michael Edwards. But those are said and described as potentially being very difficult deals to do and sort. Now, in terms of director of football, what's been said? Do let me know if the quality drops. My Wi-Fi has just been all over the place today. But it was said the feeling is that Manchester United will have 2 senior recruitment hires, a sporting director and a head of recruitment. Now, this has been said multiple times over the media that United aren't just going to bring in a director of football, they're going to bring in a head of recruitment. The director of football, Dan Ashworth, has been the most heavily linked. Doogie Freeman's been the second most heavily linked, and Michael Edwards has been the third heavily linked. There's almost been that suggestion it'll be one of those three for director of football, and then of course Paul Mitchell coming in into more of a recruitment role. Now it's been said that Paul Mitchell was not going to Roma. Those rumours are not true. And that Paul Mitchell wants the United job. He's moved back to Chester because he wants that, and that could happen. But then some other sources saying Paul Mitchell to United might not happen. I think United will get Paul Mitchell, and I think United will get a surprise name, because I think Dan Ashworth's going to be a very difficult deal to do. I'd love Dan Ashworth, I'd love Michael Edwards, but I think they're going to be very difficult deals to do, particularly Dan Ashworth. If we pull Dan Ashworth off, that is a statement and a half. Like, you don't understand. If Manchester United pull Dan Ashworth off, you pull Omar Barada from the City Group when they're in their best ever period of unlimited wealth, you take Dan Ashworth from the richest club in the world, not even 2 years, basically 2 years into his project, that is a statement. But Dan Ashworth would have to give like a year's notice in advance to leave Newcastle. Would be complicated. Could there be delays on the director of football do an announcement because they're working on Dan Ashworth, and that is so complicated to do? Potentially. Could it be to do with Michael Edwards? Potentially. We don't know who the next director of football is, but it's definitely going to be someone big, is sort of the statement. Now, interestingly, Ben Jacobs brought up a name that hasn't really been linked to us, and he said that Thiago Pinto is an option for Manchester United, and he said that Paul Mitchell is not in the frame to be sporting director role at Roma. So he was speaking about Roma and those linked to United, this and that, and what has sort of been said and what has been heavily suggested is that Thiago Pinto could be one of the names. Now, I did in my live stream yesterday read out a list of names that are reportedly people that are interested in buying, people that are interested in being the next director of football at United. Thiago Pinto was not on that list. They had the current guy who was at Juventus and formerly at Napoli. They had Andrea Berta, who's at Atletico Madrid. They had ex-Bayern Munich. They had, of course, your Freedmans, your Edwards, your Julian Wards. So I'm not a big fan of Julian Wards, your Dan Ashworths. But it's been said very clearly, United are focusing on the sporting director. They're focusing on the sporting director, and then they'll bring in someone for recruitment. And they said that Paul Mitchell's not been seen as a sporting director role, but he could be the favourite and the most wanted for the recruitment role. Plus, he's just got good connections to the club. So in terms of director of football, what was said? It was said that Omar Barada will have a say on who Manchester United's new sporting director will be, and that Ineos are working hard to finalise the appointment of Manchester United's next and new sporting director. So we've been told for a while Ineos are working hard to get this new sporting director deal in. They're definitely working hard behind the scenes on someone. They're definitely pursuing someone and keeping them quiet. I do think that right now the reason behind the delays and the quietness is because they're really actively trying to pursue Dan Ashworth and bring Dan Ashworth in, and that's a very difficult deal to do. I wouldn't be surprised if actually the reason that the director of football is sort of being delayed, that announcement, is because they're just going all out on Ashworth as well. What is the latest news on Mount and Malacia? They're close to being back. Ten Hag said that they will not be available for the Aston Villa game. Mount nor Malacia are available. It's believed that they'll be back by the end of the month, but they said that last month and they weren't back. So I don't know what to believe. Mount will probably be back a lot quicker than Malacia, but Malacia barely got injured before he came to United, and he's been out all season injured. Mason Mount's been out 80% of the season injured. Martin has been out 90% of the season injured. But Mount, I think, Mount is back in training. I'd assume that he's a couple of matches away. I mean, Malacia, does anyone even know anymore what's going on with Malacia? Does anyone even know? Whoever signs Ivan Toney for a good deal, I'll take. I like Ivan Toney, and he's got 1 year left on his contract. If it's a good deal available, I go for it. But he's a Liverpool fan. I don't want to go all out and spend too much of the budget on the striker, because I genuinely believe that Højlund is the future as well. Dan Ashworth would be amazing. I see Jesse Lingard gone to South Korea. Thought on him leaving United. I mean, look, he should have gone to West Ham. He should have stayed at West Ham. He picked other ways for money, and now he's in South Korea. I think West Ham would have been best for him a couple of years ago, but he picked Forest for money as well. Absolutely no chance Glazers league football will only get bigger in the future, and they still want a piece of that pie. That's why they've stayed. This is Dork Knight. I agree. I do think that they do have an eventual plan to leave in the long run and cash in, but I think they'll play for the short term. I think a lot of it almost relies on what's going to happen with the Super League. I think the Glazers are losing power, and Jim Ratcliffe's starting to get more and more power, and that's something that the Glazers didn't want to do. But I think the reason the Glazers have said, you know what, we're going to give Sir Jim Ratcliffe a significant amount of power is because the Glazers plan on staying here a lot longer, and they know that if they stay here a lot longer and run the club as they do, they won't be able to, because they'll run the club to the ground. They basically want to give Sir Jim Ratcliffe the power to get the club back to the top again so they can go and make money and milk the club again. I think that is the problem, because I think they're giving Ratcliffe a lot of power to the point that he's going to have more power than Avram and Joel Glazer, but it's almost also to the point of there's an ulterior motive behind it. Of course it is. It's the Glazers. Guys, please do hit that like button and, of course, subscribe down below to Alice Talks Football if you're new. Sad to lose Lissandro. I think Eric Ten Hag should have taken him off because of his long injury prone. Yet again, we couldn't afford that. I get that. I don't think we can blame Ten Hag because it's a contact injury. If it was a muscular injury and he'd been suffering muscular injuries like Elise has at Crystal Palace, it's different. But he didn't expect Kufau to just clatter his leg like that. It's a bit like Maino and Amad Diallo's injury in pre-season. I think it's just one of those where actually it's unlucky. It's not even about him being on the pitch too long. He just got clattered. But I thought when Varane was on the bench, it would have been for Martinez. It feels like Ten Hag doesn't really like Varane because obviously Ten Hag was asked about Varane's future in a press conference, and Ten Hag basically gave no indication that Varane would be staying, would be part of the future. And as soon as Maguire came back, he did drop Varane for Maguire. Now I don't know if that's because Varane had like a knock or something, but it almost feels like, sorry, I'm so tired. It almost feels like Ten Hag isn't the biggest fan of Rafael Varane, which I find quite surprising. Lingard thought he was too good for West Ham. Now look at him, says Darren. It's a shame. He could have gone to West Ham. That's the team that revived him. West Ham, he was a proper West Ham guy. And yeah, Lingard rejected Saudi. Apparently Saudi rejected Lingard because he asked for too much, but I don't know if that's the case. I think some people just write stuff for clicks, but that was one article that went around as well. Rui Pedro Brad should be head of recruitment from Benfica if Paul Mitchell doesn't arrive. I agree. I think I want a sporting director that's experienced, but I think I want a recruitment person that has worked for a Benfica or as a Paul Mitchell, where they haven't maybe worked for the biggest teams on unlimited budgets, but they're able to look at and find gems as well. You've had too much coffee. You're quite a conspiracy theorist. What was I saying? I mean, I'm just falling asleep a bit. I probably need coffee. My head is falling asleep a bit as well. They're losing power, but it's gradual. I'm afraid over the next few years, Sir Jim will gradually increase his stake by 2%. Yeah, the Glazers are eventually losing power, and that is good. I think it will be slow. I think that Sir Jim will be pushing the Glazers and eventually wanting to buy more and more of United, but I think it will be slow. I think it will almost be the other siblings before Joe and Avram even consider selling. But I think ultimately Jim Ratcliffe is slowly buying out the Glazers. It'd be nice if we could just buy them out tomorrow, but the Glazers feel like they're going nowhere. They're going nowhere in the short term. They might have to go somewhere in the long term, and hopefully they do go somewhere as well. I wonder if Ten Hag is blaming Varane for all crowd ref decisions, said David. Imagine. If United don't get rid of Casemiro this summer, expect a Hendo deal. Low sell and high wage for him, says Kaz. And I think Varane's gone in the summer. I prefer if he stayed an extra year, though, says Kaya. I agree with you there, Kaya, as well. And why is The Undertaker bringing out the trophy in Saudi Arabia? I saw that. I have absolutely no clue as well. Alice, do you think Tony's worth 80 mil and do we need him in our team? If we do, I don't think he's that amount, turning 27. Should we talk about Ivan Toney? So Manchester United have been rumoured to go in for Ivan Toney in what would be an £80 million deal. Now, I like Ivan Toney. He's a good striker. And before that betting situation happened, I would have loved him at Manchester United. The thing about Ivan Toney is £100 million for a player that, again, has 1 year left on his contract. It's a little bit on the expensive mark. If Man United's priority was a striker and Toney was the answer to Manchester United's priorities, I'd be saying go in for Ivan Toney. But United aren't in a situation where we desperately need a striker. We need a striker. We need someone that's going to be back up to Højlund. But I believe in Højlund so much. I believe that Højlund's the future, that I'm not in a position where I think it's a desperation that United get a striker. I think we need a right winger, a midfielder, a centre-back. I think there's so many other sort of positions we need to address, in all honesty, before we go for a big fat striker. We do need a striker in the window, but it doesn't have to be someone as big as expensive as Toney. I wouldn't say no to Toney. I think he's a great player. But I think 85 million is looking a bit more pricey when you consider how long's left on his contract, just the year, how long he's been out. I think for me, I don't want Man United to spend more than 40 million on the striker because I believe Højlund's the future, but I want someone to come in who will assess Højlund. You said 80 million, not 85. I'm thinking of Anthony's 80 million. 27, I think to an extent he could be worth that. He is a good player, but yeah. Toney is literally on TV saying he loves Liverpool. No thanks. And that's another thing that puts me off Toney. And I know it shouldn't, but yeah, him being a Liverpool fan as well. We 150% need a striker. We do need a striker, 100%. I'm not saying United don't need a striker. What I'm saying is because of the funds, we don't need a £100 million striker. My point is United don't need to go and get a £100 million striker. They need to get midfielder, and they need to get a centre-back, they need to get a winger, arguably another centre-back or midfielder, and then they go all out for a striker, which might be in that 50 million mark. Ivan Toney, if he's in that 50 million mark, go for it. But if he's going to be more than that, with 1 year left on his contract, I think that is one to avoid, in my opinion, as well. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do hit the likes, do subscribe as well. So obviously it was said that Omar Barad will have a say in Man United's new sporting director, and that Ineos are working hard to finalise the deal with Man United's next sporting director. The fact that Ineos are working hard very much on this name, and we don't know who the name is, says to me it could be Dan Ashworth. Now, I want to get into some of Ten Hag's comments potentially on the exit of Rafael Varane and Johnny Evans, whose futures expire at the end of the season. Obviously, Amrabat is expected to go, and who else's contract expires at the end of the season? Amrabat, Evans, Varane. Someone else's contract's expected to go. I can't remember who it is. Maybe Ericsson? No, I think he's still got 1 year left. But Eric Ten Hag was asked about the future of Varane and Johnny Evans, and he said, we haven't made a decision yet. The fact that he said he hasn't made a decision yet on Varane is quite worrying. I don't think he really rates Varane. I think something's gone on under the scenes there. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Varane, because I like Varane, and hopefully him and Ten Hag are in a good place and happy for him to stay another year. Maybe it's his wages, maybe it's on the lowest wages. It does feel like Varane and Casemiro will be forced out. Same with Anthony and Sancho, which isn't necessarily a bad thing with those two, because it feels like Ineos just want to basically sort out the wages. But it was said that Eric Ten Hag has made signing a proven forward top priority this summer, and Man United will not get drawn into a bidding war over Brentford's 100 million rated striker Tony. And Eric Ten Hag has identified Tony as a potential solution to the goal drought, but Old Trafford Chiefs are unwilling to pay over the odds for him, which is fair enough. I think had we not got Højlund, fair enough. Had that situation not gone down where Tony was out for so long, fair enough. But I don't think we can afford to spend 80 to 100 million on a striker when we still need a defender, a midfielder, and a right wing. We do need a striker, 100%, but you've got to think of how many positions we do need to address, and it's not just striker, is it? Martial will go. Victor Osimhen would be great, but it's not going to happen. Welcome to the chase of Girassi. I think United's name was just used by Girassi's agent to try and spin and get more sales. I don't think United were ever super seriously in for Girassi as well. To be honest as well, will United be building the Wembley of the North? Apparently that is the plan as well. Evan Ferguson's a G, good player there as well. And Alice and defender Alice, we need a substitute. We need backup for Leacher. We need a long-term Varane successor. You could argue we need a right back, but I think that can wait a little bit longer. We need a long-term successor to Casemiro. We potentially need another technical player in midfield that's good at ball retention, so we're not too reliant on Maino. And then we need another winger. I think there's a lot of things that United do, and I really hope that they adjust the transfer window properly as well. Tommy, we're getting some ex-Aberdeen goalkeeper on a free or something to replace him. I honestly don't know. I don't know, to be honest, as well. 110 likes, people, so do smash the like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. But why can't Ratcliffe afford a new stadium? Because it is going to be $2 billion. It is going to be like $2 billion, guys, to be there to Ratcliffe. Now, I actually tweeted this earlier, and I want to talk about United and United's transfer strategies, because United have been linked to a lot of players. There's a lot of leaks and rumours coming out about what United are going to do in the transfer market, this and that. And I said, I think a lot of these reports about Manchester United's transfer targets as plans for summer need to be taken with a pinch of salt. New director of football is unknown. Barada will start in the summer. The focus for Ineos is structure now, and once that's sorted, they will focus on transfers. Man United news is quite quiet at the moment, so I think a few sources are trying to come up with stories and do guesswork. All in all, we do know that Todibo was approved by Ten Hag and scouts, and with him being at Nice, I'm sure Nice approved. We know that Man United scouts and Ten Hag did approve Elise Braithwaite, and with Ratcliffe wanting young British core, he might approve. But other than those three players in Todibo, Braithwaite and Elise, I don't think you can take many other links to United seriously. I think you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Obviously, nearer the time, it can get serious, but I think right now, Ineos haven't really had a conversation about who they're going to sign. They've probably had a conversation about the profiles they need, and the profiles Ten Hag needs 6, that's 8, right wing centre back, someone that can maybe be back up to Højlund. But I don't think Ineos have actually identified any targets yet, because they haven't appointed the director of football, the man that will be working with Omar Barada to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what they sort of come up with in that sense as well. Ratcliffe can't afford a new stadium, but he doesn't even own the club. Why would he? Which is true. And which players could you get rid of in the summer? Well, I think United want to get rid of Lindelof, even Maguire, Varane, Amrabat will go, Evans will go, Martial will go, Sancho they want to get rid of, McTominay potentially they want to get rid of. I think that Anthony will leave, and maybe Ericsson will go. There's actually reports saying that Man United are very open to Ericsson's exit, so will be interesting as well. Alice, what is your lineup prediction against Villa? Same lineup, but with Maguire in for Leacher and Varane technically in for Leacher as well. Do you think Ahmad should start? I think no, I'll keep Ahmad on the bench, but I want to see Ahmad get off the bench. He's not ready to start, but I do want to see Ahmad get off the bench. It's frustrating watching Ahmed on the bench as well. Listen, people, please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. If you want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, updates and more, make sure you are going ahead and subscribing to Alice Talks Football. We talk daily news, we get through the news, we get through a chit chat and all that as well. And I am kind of falling asleep with a knacker today, so I do apologise for that as well. So yeah. Anyway, people, please do hit the likes. Please do subscribe down below. Let's get into a few final stories that have been going about. And this is more about sort of United youth and how good it's been, how hard the youth's been working, which is particularly exciting. I think the standout from this season at Manchester United is the youth. And we've obviously seen Harry Armas called up for first team training. Shea Lacey, someone that's rated highly by Ten Hag if he's called out. So there's a lot of positives in terms of the youth at United. The first team is still a bit toxic as well. But all in all, I want to say, don't agree with this blue card crap rule. Don't agree with it. I think we need to get rid of a lot of the deadwood. Whether going to Saudi is going to help that or not, we'll have to wait and see. And I think we need to spend smartly. And I'm going to have to end the live stream because I'm falling asleep, so I don't even know what I'm going to say. I'll have control over what I say, so I'll probably say something stupid. But thank you everyone for tuning into today's live stream. Please do hit the like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Kevin said Avram, the Glazers needed him more than he needs them. He's a businessman and a very successful one. He'll one up the Glazers by pledging to rebuild Old Trafford. Interesting comment there. But yeah, big up everyone for watching. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. See you next time, and bye. Oh, could Slanky be the striker to bring in? Maybe. I'd have to keep more of an eye on him.